Hey, what's up, guys? Mike Red Fox and this guy, Hobbyist Miner here.
Hey.
In today's video, we're going to talk about one of the most common questions we get asked, which is, what GPU should I buy? What rig should I build based on the budget that I have? And I think we are both on different ends of the spectrum.
Definitely.
Here, right? You are probably like the lower end budget, right? Trying to get some really affordable cards, get really good deals.
Yep.
I'm like the I don't care, I'll spend whatever I need to get the most efficient GPUs. So stay tuned. In this video, we're going to give each of our opinions, which answers the most common question we probably get asked.
Roll intro.
Yeah. All right, so why don't you get us started here? And you've had one mentality getting into the game almost a year ago, and we got a lot of GPUs in front of us here, which I think should cover the spectrum. So what is your budget? Like what kind of questions do you get asked, and what would you recommend based on what we have in front of us and some components to build a rig?
Yeah, so when you're starting out, Mike and I both recommend, like, do not drop 20 grand or 10 grand. You know, you're getting into it, you don't know if it's going to be profitable, you don't know how it's going to go. So I definitely come from the school of thought of small budget, really small budget, like a few GPUs used. So if you're getting started, you know, I started with an HP motherboard.
Yeah.
I took out of a HP computer, and I went ahead, you know, it costs $50, not even. So I recommend that, you know, starting out with something recycled if you really can't afford much, if you don't have a lot to invest. And then on top of that, you know, we start to talk about power supplies, but you have to talk about GPUs first. You know, what are you going to use there? So I always recommend people to either start out in that 4 gigabyte space. But if you have a little extra cash, even just a few hundred, to look at cards like something like this, which is the 1660 Super, or my favorite card out there, which is something like this, which is the XFX RX 580. So both of these you can find used. You can find them on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, offers up. So start out small. I mean, the XFX you can get for $300 used, but you have to be picky as to where you're going to buy it from, who you're going to buy from. Your 1660 Super TIs, they're a little bit pricier on the used market. You're finding more $350, $400. So that in mind, I always recommend, like, start out with one GPU just to learn, like, how do you mine? On top of that, then you're looking into power supplies. So start out with an ATX power supply. You can power your motherboard, you can power your GPU. Don't go crazy. Just get something like small, like a 500 watt power supply. You're powering your motherboard and the GPU, and then you can start to add to it. And start out with a cheap frame. Amazon has some great $50 metal frames that are 6 GPU, and they'll definitely get you in the door. So that's how I would start, with a small budget to get into mining.
Yeah, I think about when I first started, I'm sure many of you are in the same situation. You probably have a PC with maybe even an older card in it, and you just start there. And I was in the same situation. Actually, it was that 1080 right there was my first GPU that I started with mining. And then, you know, maybe even you can just slot in a second GPU in your PC, and you go with just a cheaper card. I think one of the things that we both luckily uncovered for us is that we love doing this. But there is a chance that it's maybe too much for you, and don't go drop like 20 grand if you're still learning, still exploring, if this is something you even really want to do. So on the lower end budget, I think that's a really good call, just to spend. You got to put in some work though, right? You got to put in some work, because you put in work finding good deals.
Yeah, that's
so
always
that's
always the challenge. So, like, everybody just wants it handed to them. Like, I just want to go to Best Buy, I want to buy my stuff, and I'm done.
LOL.
This is not the industry for you. I spend a lot of time on secondhand sites. That's a lot of the GPUs that I buy and hardware that I buy, looking for the deals. Yeah, there's a ton of 580s out there, but they're going to range from like $500 down to like $300, and if they're local, that's even better. So then you can, you know, I love to negotiate. I'll throw it, hey, I'll meet you today. I got $200 cash. Let's meet up. I love that stuff. Versus like someone like yourself, you're like, I just want to buy it. It gets here, gets delivered, and I'm done. So yeah, you definitely have to put in the work if you only have a small budget, and you can't afford that. And a lot of this stuff down this end is all secondhand, versus your end is more like new. Like, you're not going to buy that stuff used.
Yeah. So talking about, I guess on my side is a little bit higher of a budget, really thinking about, I'm going to get this GPU and it will stay with me for probably the next 3, 4, 5 years. I think the mentality, correct me if I'm wrong, with some of these GPUs is you're probably going to mine with them for a little bit and then look to rotate them out or sell them. Am I right on that?
Yep, exactly. You'll start small, you'll mine it, and then you might go, okay, I want to sell 3 of these in order to move to one of these down here.
Yeah, so then maybe that's where you started, or maybe you fell in love with this, doing it with the GPU you had in your gaming PC, and you're ready to invest a little bit more. And we might be talking now in the $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, even up to $10,000, which may sound like a lot, but just nowadays to get in the game and get some really good GPUs, that I think is very much a reality for not only the cards, but building the rig itself. So some of the ones, they might be on the little opposite end of the spectrum, but as far as new, which is what I like to go with, which is just current generation GPUs, I mean, we can start with even this one here, which is a 6600. It's a Sapphire Pulse 6600, really efficient. And that's what you're gonna find with a lot of the newer cards, is they're very efficient in terms of the amount of hash rate they give you for the amount of wattage that they use. Really small, really easy to power, doesn't really take anything special, and good for a home setup. Not a lot of heat is being thrown off by that card. And if you want to go to the NVIDIA side, kind of in that lower price point, it was probably the 3060, which is an EVGA 3060 right there. So although not going to be as efficient on Ethereum as the Sapphire Pulse, thinking ahead, still has a lot of longevity in it, considering some of the other algorithms that you're going to be able to mine when you can't mine Ethereum. Now, the big boys.
Oh boy.
If you want to go really big, because the other thing to consider is density, right? There's one thing considering low price point GPUs that maybe even are a little more efficient, but there's another thing to consider. This one GPU, this is a 3090, can do so much hash and take one PCIe slot on a motherboard, and you can get a lot of them in one rig versus maybe, I mean, I don't even know the math. How many of these to do the hash of a 3090?
4 of those.
4 of those?
Well, yeah, a little less. I mean, I even thought about it with the 580. Like your 580 here does, so 30, 32. You can get a little more aggressive, a little higher. But you have to imagine, like, this is your like 300 price point.
Yeah.
Now to get something of that size, how many GPUs do you have to go ahead and buy to even equal that,
Yeah, I mean, and these are rolling like $2,000 right now, the 3090s. Yeah. So just thinking about that, if you got, your budget is $10,000, you're probably getting, what, 3, 4 of these and spending the rest on building the rig components itself. But for me, I like getting the newer stuff, thinking about holding on to it for a long time. But yeah, I'm going to spend more up front and just cross my fingers that's going to pay off in the long term. I also think these will hold, hopefully, more value in the long term should I decide to sell them off later.
Now, if you were to go on that end, higher end, you have bigger budget, what motherboards or power supplies would you recommend to pair with these when you have more money to work with?
I think if you're going to spend the cost on the GPU, you still want to go really cost effective on the motherboard and power supply and all that. Motherboard, I look for right now anything that can do 6 GPUs without having to get any type of splitters or use like M.2 adapters or anything like that. So there's still motherboards you can find probably like sub $80. That'll do that. The trick is finding the CPU to power them.
Yeah, it's always rough.
Yeah, to run on those, because it's just really tough. And then power supply, personally, I'll do gold. I'll do 1,000 watt ATX golds, but when you're getting into like that would be fine for this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right?
Super efficient.
And the 3060, but when you get up to these 3090s, it's probably server power supply time, which can be a little intimidating when you're first getting started. I know it definitely was for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean I love starting out with ATX and a server power supply, and then you having lots of room to build upon. The worst thing is like having a limitation of power. It's like, all right, now I got to buy a different power supply because this one's not enough. I even go that route with some of the lower end stuff. Is like you buy your ATX, and then as you grow, you add a server power supply, and that helps to hold things, especially because for the amount of watts that you can get for such a cheaper price with server power supplies, it's definitely the way to go. You just have to see what it's rated in order to get the best efficiency.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps it up, and we got a lot of different GPUs here. Everybody's situation is completely different. Your budget is different, your setup is different, your power cost is different. So it's impossible to say do this or do that. I think
Yeah.
the best we can do is just share our thoughts and our experiences
Exactly.
based on our situations.
Yep, I totally agree.
All right, so that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Me and Hobbyist Miner hanging out, talking GPUs and talking budgets. Please take care of yourself, take care of each other. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Check out both of our channels, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.